So make yourself comfortable for a talk. We can start, and I welcome you for these afternoon sessions. We are going to have 4 such afternoon sessions, always initiated by a little introductory talk, and then 2/3 of the afternoon are for our discussion, exchange amongst ourselves. And you know that I'm not an expert of neither economy nor other social area, but I'm rather someone who is considered an expert of meditation and mind and consciousness, and I've been a practitioner of the Buddhist tradition for more than 40 years, 45 years now. And it is from this perspective that I would love to take a look at this world and our present challenges and engage in discussion with as many people as possible. So I'm really happy to engage with people who are professionals and experts in their fields, and to see what kind of good solutions, suggestions, proposals we can come up with. And actually, the outline of today's introductory talk is very simple. I will look at the world as if it were an organism. One organism with lots of different aspects. And I'm going to use what is called the 4 Noble Truths, the 4 insights of the Buddha, which he proclaimed 2,500 years ago as his analysis of this cyclic existence and suffering, causes of suffering, cure and treatment. I will use exactly that as the basic structure of my talk. And it is very much a structure that is used also in medicine. So actually, first we look a little bit at what are the symptoms of the illness. Yeah? What can we observe? And then we come to a diagnosis of the causes. From there we move to the question, is there a possibility of cure? And if so, 4th point, how do we get there? Which therapy do we have to apply? So this is the same structure as the outline of the Buddhist teaching, and it's the structure that we work with when people come to us for treatment. We have the case taking, we try to evaluate the causes, come to a diagnosis, see if we can encourage the patient in terms of cure. Is there a cure possible? And if so, what is the path to take? And so in all these 4 areas, I will take the standpoint of someone observing and being a practitioner of awareness, of deep consciousness. And when I look at the symptoms, actually, yes, the patient is sick. Yes, the planet, this world, shows signs of dysfunctioning, definitely. And when I look, then of course, for the human beings among themselves, they're always struggling, they're always fighting with each other, and it's nice to have some initiatives like the United Nations or the European Union, where countries get together and try to avoid war. Yeah, it's beautiful that we also have such situations, collaborations, which are meaningful and which are the outcome of previous illnesses, yeah? Previous strong catastrophes like the Second World War. So we have, as a result of that, we have come to some good conclusions. But now the situation is such that not only the humans are doing their usual fighting, but actually it seems that they are creating such an imbalance in the organism of the world that all the elements are in disorder. Let's have a look first of the four elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. Let's start with the earth. In what state is the earth, the substance? And we have to say, well, in this world, there are lots of signs of desertification, getting more and more lands are turning into deserts. The soil, the fertile soil, is becoming less. The soil is being washed away, what we call humus in German language. What is it called in English? Is this? Huh? Humus? Yeah, okay. So this, instead of growing, which would be the sign of proper agriculture, it is diminishing in most parts due to monocultures and, of course, due to killing the microorganisms which are responsible for the humus, yeah? Which are responsible for the growth of fertile soil. And we have lots of toxins in the ground. The earth itself, in many areas of the world, especially in those areas which were the most fertile, is actually in a devastating state. So that you really need great care to bring it back to, yes, a functioning which does not depend on fertilization, which does not depend on pesticides, which does not depend on fungicides, and so on. All the artificial support for agriculture, if that drops away, most agricultural production becomes ineffective. So we are actually in a state of affairs for what concerns the earth as such, where we would say, well, normal plant growth, normal agriculture and so on has become more difficult in large areas of the globe. Yeah? The whole planet, you look at it, the main agricultural regions, there is a depletion of the minerals, of the oligoelements in the earth, a depletion of microorganisms, bacteria, and so all of what is needed for a rich soil is actually getting less and less. So, if we look at, we are teaching here on the island of Mallorca, in this beautiful place called Reiet, which is like an oasis, but the water is salty. The groundwater has to be filtered, to be freed from all the human-made toxins, and to be freed from the seawater coming in, because humans are pumping the groundwater to an extent that is really harming the life on the island. So the salt is becoming such that the groundwater has become undrinkable. And all the drinking water is imported to this island, to which come more than 10 million tourists every year, and there's 1 million living on the island, 1 million inhabitants. It's incredible, and we have this state of affairs already in most big cities. Water is imported, it's not from the place anymore. The groundwater is spoiled in many areas. You know, in Germany, in Switzerland, in Netherlands, in Denmark, and so on. These are the places from where I know the nitrates in the groundwater, due to keeping pigs and due to spreading out the urine of the cows, you know. This season now, in autumn, they are trying to empty their silos to make space for the winter. All of this is doing great, great harm to the drinking water. And I'm not the only one to say that the wars of the future are going to be about water. Not so much about oil anymore. This is soon finished. But the water, who controls the water? Because it's going to be scarce. It's already a scarcity in many areas. Even where I live, in the Black Forest, at 1,000 meters height, a very rich nature, we have summers now where there's not enough water for the cows. So they can't send the cows on the higher fields, on the higher meadows, where they used to go for centuries. The springs are drying up, even in Central Europe. Not to speak of southern France, which is really lacking water, not to speak of Spain, which is a catastrophe, not to speak of southern Italy and Greece and so on. You know, it's like, it's really bad. And, you know, when you look at overall state of affairs for the water, the oceans are polluted. The microplastic in the oceans is omnipresent, and the big plastic, you know, is circulating in parts of the Antarctic Sea and so on. It's being ingested by the fish and the whales and so on, and it's creating incredible disturbances. It's in our blood now. It's circulating in our own system because we drink it all the time with the water. It's in the rain. Okay? It's everywhere on the globe. It's on the North Pole as much as on the South Pole. It is being carried everywhere. Plastics, toxins, the water is not what it used to be. It's not just that it gets warmer, it is contaminated. And we will need more and more sophisticated techniques to purify the water and then to give it back its life, because this whole purification process is taking out natural qualities from the water, which come through the rocks, through the oceans, through the movement of the seas and so on. All of this is enriching the quality of the water and is information for our organism, which is 70% or more water. We are actually water beings. Yeah? We have to be aware of that. If we spoil the element water, we are spoiling the most important element of our own life. And I move on to the element of fire, which means temperature. You know what's happening. Everyone talks about the warming of the planet, the global warming. Well, let's try, but without any radical change, that we will never reach this 1.5 warming to which we would love to limit it. Austria has lived its first long half year of continuously being 3 degrees above the normal temperature. Country in the middle of Europe, already 3 degrees warming was this summer. And many other places are following. So we should be aware, when we talk of 3 degrees global warming, this is the average of oceans and land mass. But the land mass is much warmer than the warming of the ocean. So when we talk about 3 degrees overall, it means 5 or 6 degrees for where we live. Okay? And this has incredible consequences. Already, the warming is such that we have forest fires everywhere. A few years ago, we were told about a tipping point in the tundra, you know, the tundra, which is in Russia and Lapland and so on, in northern Canada. And now the tundra is burning. It doesn't stop to burn. Just nobody talks about it. It has started to burn, and it is liberating the methane gas, into the air constantly. And this was called a tipping point a few years ago when that starts happening, because it's much more important than the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We have forest fires everywhere. Around Athens, almost all the forest has disappeared around this 5 million city, and so on. You know about California, you know about Australia, you know in the whole of Australia how hot it has become, that they can't find drinking water. They have desalination factories now to produce drinking water from seawater and so on. It's drying up. And we know that we cannot expose ourselves to the sun as much as before anymore because the ozone coverage has been damaged. So we have larger and larger. We can't even talk of holes anymore, like it used to be before, a hole above Australia, but not above where we live. No, it's everywhere. The ozone levels, make it that we cannot expose ourselves to the sun anymore. We have to be covered, we have to always take creams and so on. The heat is one thing, but then we have also extreme cold temperatures, because the imbalance is not a balanced imbalance, it's like an imbalanced imbalance. It gets warmer, but it also gets colder. And we move on to the element of wind. These imbalances in temperature make that the air moving from hot to colder places, cooling down and so on, all these movements become much stronger. So we have storms. We had our first hurricanes now in Germany, a country which never had hurricanes before. We have devastating storms all over the United States. We have them everywhere now. And here, of course, we have to be prepared for the winter. This has become normal as well. So the wind element is actually becoming stronger. It is everywhere becoming stronger. And the air that is coming with the wind is the air which we are all breathing, and it's polluted. We don't find clean air anymore. It's carrying all the pollution with it from all over the planet. And we cannot escape it. It is everywhere on the planet. When I grew up and I was first politically active, we had the sour rain. I don't know if some of you remember. At 800 meters altitude, the trees were all dying because of the sour rains, and it affected everybody from Scandinavia to the Alps and so on, and that was stopped. But the distribution of pollution through the airs is everywhere. Whether it's the Chinese or the Americans or the Europeans that pollute the air, whether it is Indian factories, whether it's in Africa, wherever, whether it is the cows which do it, all over the planet. We are sharing that, and all of that makes that we have polluted earth, polluted water, polluted air. Now what you think we have to deal with? We will have to deal with the corresponding diseases. And already we have a threatening decline of variety of species in the animal realm and in the plant realm. Not only due to the pollution of these three elements, but also to the fact that the space is getting less and less for animals, insects and plants to develop freely without the influence of human beings. Human beings are everywhere now. This week we have reached 8 billion people on the planet. 8 billion. When I went to school, I learned the world population is 3.5 billion. That was what I learned in school. We have more than doubled in my lifetime, and it will go quickly to increase even more. Some very optimistic people believe that it will stop at 10 billion or 11 or 12, but, well, probably it will have to stop because the problems will become such that it will stop by itself. Overpopulation always has a price. But the price for us, I'm not even so much worried about. You know, we will have to pay for our own lack of wisdom, our own lack of insight. Okay. But our children and grandchildren, what about them? They can rightly say, what did we do about it? Did you ever reflect? And we are reflecting, that's why I'm sitting here. It's not the first time that I talk about this subject. Did you reflect maybe about having a different attitude towards animals? Why did you permit that in your lifetime half the species died out? How is that possible? How is that possible that we have only 20, 30 plants from which we are living, while the world offers hundreds and hundreds of plants which could usually be in our kitchen? How poor is a German marketplace when you go to a grocery store in comparison to a marketplace out in the countryside in wherever, a rural place where still you have the old vegetables. Where you know, for example, in Brazil about 20 kinds of mangoes, or where you know in Germany about 30 kinds of potatoes. You know, what's happening? What's happening to the diversification that was the richness of this planet? And this is what is happening. So actually, there's a problem with space as well, the last element, the fifth one. The space is getting crowded by human beings. And because of the humans fostering some animals like chicken and cows and pigs and so on, there is at the same time an overpopulation. So for what is the description of the symptoms, nothing new, I guess, for you. There is, you're well-informed people. It is just this summary and this way of going with the elements, like for a diagnosis of a patient. Now, the diagnosis of causes, let's take that much deeper. It's easy to talk about the greed, about the yearning for profit, about these normal ways of talking about things. Actually, the whole problem comes from a misguided search for happiness. All these endeavors of human beings, which are as a result destroying the planet or disrupting the harmony of the elements in the planet, they come from wishes to make life easier, to be happier, to live nice things, to have nice things, to discover new things. It's actually quite a normal, natural motivation. The idea in every step of our so-called evolution, then this Homo sapiens, which is not as wise as sapiens would suggest, then tried to save time by inventing better methods. Moving from hunters and fishermen and collectors to the agriculture, inventing the iron, the wheel, the agriculture which was producing more than necessary. That was around 3,000 years ago. And then always improving, always this this constant yearning for improvement. Better houses, better protection against the weather, easier food, and always the wish to have a little bit more free time. And this idea of free time actually is quite a recent invention. It's the idea that we have work and that we have kind of leisure time, which is creating a separation and always a wish to have more time and to do agreeable things and to do them in the easiest way. And there, the innovative human mind, the intellect, has become the servant of a search for happiness outside. And that's where I, as a Buddhist practitioner, would see the root problem. There is a restlessness in this world. There is a restlessness and agitation. Human beings just can't sit still and enjoy that life is as such. They want more, they get bored so easily, they want more, they want different experiences than what is now. And as a meditator, I know that the happiness is to be found in here, in our own mind. And everyone who hasn't found true happiness in one's own mind is searching outside, thinking that success, partnership, house, children, whatever the outside can offer, holiday trips to Bali, wedding ceremonies in Reiet, whatever, that will do it. Yes? That will be it. No. We know that usually when we go for the best of happiness on Christmas, this is the most risky time in the families. Yes? It's so easy to get into a fight. Because the orientation is so much to the outside. But when you have people who are living from the inside, there is a fulfillment. There's a fulfillment coming from being at home in one's own body-mind. This fulfillment from a loving heart, the fulfillment from a sensitive body-mind which feels part of nature, which is not different from nature. It's not possessing nature in order to make use of it for me, but actually we are part of it. We are as much serving as we are receiving. So all of this is a sign that you can say the diagnosis is the human being responsible for those changes that I enumerated is cut off from his own source of happiness. The jewel of mind, the jewel of one's heart mind, of one's own qualities is not used. We call this in the Buddhist tradition the wish-fulfilling jewel of our mind. This wish-fulfilling jewel you contact through relaxation. But relaxation is far from normal in our life. The most agitated societies, the most frenetically speedy societies are the ones injuring the life of everybody. The more life speeds up, the more boredom there is, the more you need relief from boredom, the more loneliness there is. There is separation from one's own source of happiness, there is separation from others, there's less togetherness, there's less community spirit, there's less community with the plants and the animals. There's more and more separation, and for all this feeling of loneliness and boredom and separation, we need to find a relief. Now, in this quest for relief, for happiness, then we are very inventive. we find a solution. We have some machine to switch on. Before it was television, now hardly anybody is using television, or at least a television with 60 channels. But mostly it's happening now with the computer, with the smartphone. We have what we need in our pocket. We can always give us a little lullaby, schnuller, a little something to suck on. We have it in our pocket. We can quickly be relieved. I'm connected, but it's fake connection. So the diagnosis is deeply unhappy people, not connected to their own source, to their own nature of mind, and not connected to the nature of plants and animals, the elements of which we are a part. We are made from these elements. They are completely in us. Earth, water, fire, temperature, wind, movement, space. We are made of that. Yeah? And this is also, we will learn that later, part of how we describe the mind. The mind itself also has these 5 elemental qualities. So the roots of this error is actually, you can put it in 2 words. It is outer versus inner. Outer search for happiness instead of inner finding of happiness. Always on the search, never finding, because you can only find that which is inside of you. Outside you can never find, it's changing, but this source of happiness is unchanging. So this unchanging, always present source of happiness has not been found. And you can also use another set of 2 words. You can say the error is quantity over quality. And this will be very interesting for our discussion on economics, because instead of measuring quantity, we have to find ways of finding out quality. What is the quality of products? What's the quality of life? What's the quality of happiness? Which way of being active in this world creates more quality, life quality, healthy qualities, sustainable qualities, togetherness, and so on? Where is the quality that is the cure? Yeah, we have to go in the direction of curing that separation, of curing that disharmony of the elements, of curing that lack of respect. Actually, all of this is also a question of ego-centeredness or anthropocentrism, humans as seeing themselves as the center of the world, like the ego, the me, sees himself as the most important in the group. From that we can move towards respect and interbeing. Yeah? So I'm coming actually to the cure now. When the root cause is craving, is grasping, is wanting to have outer sources of pleasure, then the cure will be to let go of that craving, because one has found that happiness that one is searching for. And that's the happiness of not only awakened people. You don't have to become an awakened yogini in order to be happy. Simple people are also happy. Simply content. We are talking about contentment. We are talking about this feeling of belonging somewhere, of being in unity, of being in a place connected to people, knowing the trees from one's childhood, seeing how one tree grows and falls and the next one goes. To live continuity and not to be without roots because one has moved 10 times in one's life and finally somewhere one is stranded and one will stay for a while. So actually roots in the earth, roots in the place, roots in community, We have to become rooted in our own mind. The deepest root of our own mind is our own mind's nature. And that will actually be a new growth in quality. In a way, it is a return to the source. It's like coming home. But of course, it will be a development. The cure will not be, living without technology, but all of it needs to serve the quality, the true quality of life, and not more quantity. The quantities of energy output, of material output, of all the minerals and oligo-elements which we are using in order to produce our technical stuff, all of that has to be reduced. It has to be recycled. We have to become really wise and intelligent, so that the quality increases and the damage decreases. And I believe it's possible. I believe that the cure is possible. I'm not talking about a cure for the planet. The planet and the so-called nature, when humans talk about nature, they don't seem to include themselves, which is a big error. But nature without humans will easily survive, especially without humans. Most of the errors which we have done, when the human species is gone, will be repaired within 1,000 years. Yeah, some of them in decades, some of them in 100 years, and some of them in a millennium or two, which is no time. It's a no time for the planet. It's so short. And this human being, which takes himself to be so important, should just take his proper place in this theater on this planet and be a little bit more respectful, because the human being is nothing without the plants, without the animals, without the water, without the air. You understand? Without the sun, we are nothing. We're just gone very, very quickly. So, respectful life, yes, it's possible. And actually the cure would be that, let's just say what would be, like when we talk about perfect cure in medicine, we envision the possible, the impossible possible, you can say. Even if it is an ideal never to be reached. In medicine we know complete sanity, complete health can never be reached. It's not a stable state. It is a state always in the progress, always, it's due to the changing atmosphere, the changing influences. Health means that you are able to adapt and to constructively use the challenges. So I think that's possible. Yes, the planet can adapt, human beings can adapt, and we can come to a healthy way of being if we all focus on the inside. And now I come to the therapy here. So basically I'm saying enlightenment is possible for everybody. And there is many small steps in that direction. And basically we could have an awakened society. We could. This is impossible when you think at how obstinate human beings are. Then you say, no, we will never get there. But somehow we have to start somewhere. And we have ourselves, we have our mind, and we have groups of beings who are very motivated. And some enterprises are doing it, countries are beginning to do it. We'll talk about that later. For example, the little country of Bhutan who is doing that, or the Canton Waadt in Switzerland has decided to follow this gross national happiness standard. There is cities like Amsterdam or others who are following that direction. Copenhagen is already making big moves in that direction. So we have We have examples. Yeah? We have examples that show, yeah, let's talk about the possible impossible. Yeah? The impossible possible. And actually, we would all need daily practice. Yes? The whole of humanity, and especially us who are sitting here, we need a daily practice of connecting with these heart qualities. The daily drinking from the source. Going into that most open, most relaxed state of being, and to know, oh wow, it's all there. And from that comes the inspiration, not to change the outside world to be more happy, but to communicate to the outside world how everybody else can also drink from the source. It's a completely different activity. Instead of all trying to make the world better, we are learning to be better in the world. We don't need to make the world a better world. The world is quite fine. We know a way to drink from the source. Everything else, for as long as we are kind of trying to negotiate how much the climate can become warmer, how many toxins are allowed, and so on, all of that is just patchwork with the symptoms. Patching up here a little bit before we discover that we have to take care of that problem. Now it is the temperature. Later on it will be the poisoning of the earth. It will be the poisoning of the oceans. We will run from one symptom to the next. And then we will be started and say, well, what's happening to the younger generation? We have to focus on better education. The focus will change all the time because we don't go to the source. So why not go immediately to every one of us developing a kind of ethics of connecting with one's own true being every day. And from there, let the activity arise. From there, engage in what we are doing by giving dominance to quality over quantity. We continue with the same work we are doing, but we always favor quality instead of quantity. And there is very precise tools about how to do that. We know all of what we can do for that. It's all there. We don't have to invent that. But this is not my job to go into all these details. But I have met enough people, enough programs, and I know multinational companies who are doing it, countries who are doing it, towns who are doing it, families who are doing it, individuals. It can be done if the motivation is there. And there I come to the basic, you can say, the finishing line of this little talk. The motivation is the decisive factor. Motivation means that we place the common good before personal profit. The common good, this means the welfare of all, including the plants, animals, the elements of this earth, the welfare of all has to come before personal welfare. The personal welfare is served through the community spirit, and we take care of each other. So it's not that we have to worry about that, it's just that we do not insist on, but I want to fly to Mallorca, when it's just not maybe the thing to do. Maybe we should live there instead of flying there, And if we fly, then we counterbalance this with other activities. So this insistence on my little personal pleasure, we can't allow ourselves to continue with that. This is the motivation. The motivation is to do my spiritual practice for the benefit of all, and my work becomes my spiritual practice. Spiritual practice is to be engaged in this world. Politics, economies, education, whatever you do, being a hairdresser, all of that is spiritual activity. And let's use it as that. Let's use it as a spiritual practice. Let's make our whole life a life of changing for quality. And this we do we have to develop the right view. The view in Mahamudra, in the meditation tradition from which I speak, the view means an understanding of how it is, which is very close to reality. To understand that in every one of us there is a treasure. There's a treasure to be discovered. Even if right now we doubt ourselves that we are able to love, that we are able to be so generous, that we are able to be so receptive, actually to encourage that in each one of us, that behind all the obstacles and veils, all these ego-centered patterns which we have developed, beyond that, there's a very precious being. And the whole life is dedicated to let that precious being, those qualities, to let them unfold. And in the way we deal with ourselves and with our employees, with our children, with our parents, this is the topmost intention, that to live that view in everyone that is a little Buddha, waiting to manifest. And I see it manifesting. I see it in daily life manifesting in so many people. And from there, we move from the motivation, we move to the view and to the meditation, which means we have to practice that. Meditation means to practice, to become used, to become habituated to doing like that. So far, in the world, in general, we have become habituated to logics of profit, logics of quantity, logics of absurdities, that a war, like spending money on arms which are used for war, is counted as an increase of the gross national product. How absurd can that be? That which destroys, every catastrophe which comes and destroys, because there is renewed building and reparation and so on, it all enhances economy. This kind of thinking, we have patterns, and we will need to think differently. We have to become used to not swallow those absurdities of our times. We have to change them. We have to stand up against them. We have to not swallow them. It's not normal. It's upside down. So meditation means daily meditation at home, drinking from the source, moving out into the world with the courage of being part of a community, engaged in that, a backup, so that we have the necessary stand to do what's helpful in this world, and that's action. From meditation comes action. Meditation needs to serve action. View, meditation, action is the old triad, the 3 points, what Mahamudra practice is all about. It's to go into activity, to be actually a servant in this world, a free servant. Someone who serves in the spirit of we, of togetherness, in this world, and brings others on the path, collects them, creates a momentum, and we join other momentums. We don't have to do it ourselves. There are momentums already around us, We just have to give those momentums our help, our time, our support. That's the way to cure. There are so many people moving in the right direction in this world. We just have to join them. And the basic last piece of advice is we need to learn to do nothing. Yes. This human being, which is a compulsory activist, is destroying the planet. Human beings need to be able to do nothing, to be able to sit, enjoy, interact, but not constantly proving their own existence by constructing more and more, making more and more projects that are actually more like glorifications of oneself than useful for the world. So we have to step out of that. We have to become more relaxed. The daily doing nothing. My own life has started like this with the 10 minutes of doing nothing in school, and from there I've become a meditator, and from doing nothing one develops a great sensitivity, a great, how do you say, because one is not planning anything, one is not preoccupied, one begins to feel so much. And from that feeling, from that sensitivity, come much wiser actions than from this insensitive, impulsive activism that always wants to go forward, forward, forward. Compulsory progress, you can say, progress in the sense of regress, always regressing into this infantile proving of one's own prowess and power and me being such a success in the world. This destroys the world. And doing nothing is already part of the cure. And from doing nothing we can become sensitive and we can do something beneficial. And while we are doing nothing, we learn to master our mind. We learn to relax those impulses and go beyond those impulses to a much deeper connectedness to this inter-being, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, this connectedness, and from that connection then come very helpful intuitions of what might help the world. Okay, so this was my first little talk. Yeah. Applying the Four Noble Truths, the Four Insights of the Buddha to the situation of nowadays. Thank you very much for listening.